June 28th will of course be a mega fight as Jake Paul, the problem child, takes on the former world champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in a blockbuster affair. Obviously, a lot of people have a bunch of questions for this fight. Oh, it's rigged. It's he only picked him because he's bringing him up all the way up from middleweight, which is basically true. But this is technically the most decorated fighter Jake Paul has fought in a very long time. Obviously, Chavez Jr. doesn't have the best track record recently, but it looks like he is coming to upset Jake Paul. I mean, who really wants to lose to Jake Paul? It's not really most people's bucket list. But besides that, there are two other very good fights on the card. That being Zurdo Ramirez defending his unified cruiserweight titles against the mandatory Uniel Dorquitos. A very interesting matchup between two very good cruiserweights. And of course another one, lightweights, as Floyd Schofield looks to defeat Tevin Farmer. Of course, Tevin Farmer has been basically in super close fights against the best of the division. It is more of a test for Schofield. If he's really the best, then he would beat Tevin Farmer. Of course, Tevin Farmer, he's obviously not going there to lose, so obviously this was going to be a very good fight. But besides that, let's get on with the lightweights. Tevin Farmer is 33-8, 8 wins by way of knockout and 2 losses by way of knockout with only 1 draw. Of course, his most recent losses come by Raymond Morataya, unanimous decision win, a very close fight. William Zepeda, a split decision one where he's dropped them in the 4th round, where he lost anyway, split decision. He then rematched Zepeda where he lost majority decision. So obviously, he went toe-to-toe with the boogeyman, not once, but twice. This is basically Karen Chukachan with boots, right? He made the boogeyman look human, twice. Besides that, he's taking on the young fighter Floyd Schofield, 18-0 with 12 wins by way of knockout. Of course, he is coming off of his own unanimous decision win against Renes Tejas Giron, where he was dropped in the 11th round. Overall, a very dominant performance. Obviously, he was dropped, so a lot of questions about that. He's also beaten people like Jesus Valentin Leon. And overall, it's looking like it's time for Schofield to step up. And how much of a step up is Tevin Farmer? A big one. Tejas Giron, obviously, he goes to fight. He has upsetted people before. And obviously, he's not going there just to lose. But defensively, it seems like he's not the best. Not a punching bag. Obviously, he punches back. Obviously, dropped Schofield. But overall, Tevin Farmer is overall the better technical boxer, defensive boxer, and he's a very crafty veteran who obviously did not get stopped by Zepeda. So how is this fight going to go? Of course, Schofield is known for his big bursts of attack, very strong, quick, very educated jab, as people would say. And Tevin Farmer is more of the slippy, slimy veteran, counter puncher, can defend your best shots. The difference is Zepeda and Schofield are two different types of fighters. Obviously, Zepeda is more of an inside type of fighter, body punches galore. While Schofield likes to stay not on the complete outside, but likes a little bit more of a distance, and he's not afraid to move around the ring. So obviously, a very different type of fight. Zepeda has the quicker combinations, while I guess you could say Schofield has the better single punches. But one thing that happened in the Giron fight that could be beneficial to Farmer is that in close range, if you obviously utilize correctly, that's where you land your best shots on someone like Schofield. Obviously, Schofield kind of needs his distance to land his powerful shots. And on the inside, weirdly enough, that's where Giron had kind of some of his best work, inside, cutting the distance. And Farmer could do that. He can make it a dogfight. He's a veteran. He knows how to do those type of things. The difference is Schofield, although obviously not in his nature, I guess, as the commentators would say, kind of likes to go in a brawl. But he is more than content to fight on the outside, right? With that strong jab and quick combinations, Farmer will probably lose by decision. He's a very durable guy, obviously. There's no way that Farmer gets knocked out. He's a very durable dude. But what's unfortunate for Schofield is Farmer's already fought someone not completely the same style, but the same type of quick combination work like Morataya. And he did pretty good. Now, of course, not until the second half, right? But overall, he's pretty good. He's a good counter puncher. He could do a lot of things. But the problem is, Farmer isn't getting any younger. It's as simple as that. He's not getting any younger. Farmer can 100% exploit Schofield's inexperience, but I don't think it's going to happen. Give me Floyd Schofield by unanimous decision win. I feel like he dominates Devin Farmer. I think it's one of those fights where you think, oh, he's not going to dominate, and he ends up dominating for some reason. I think that's just going to happen. I think that's just what's going to happen. But besides that, the co-main event, obviously, Zurdo Ramirez and Yuniel Dorticos, obviously, is a very good fight for the cruiserweight titles. In Dorticos, I have no idea. I'm so sorry. I'm butchering this dude's name super badly.
Dorticos.
I'm just going to call him Powell because it's actually part of his birth name. So I'm just going to call him Powell from now on. I am so sorry. But Powell is 27-2, 25 wins by way of knockout. This dude packs a punch, literally. Of course, he has been stopped one time in his losses. But they are against nothing but the best. That being Marat Gassiev, being 12th round stoppage loss for the IBF cruiserweight titles in a very kind of close fight. Of course, his latest loss is another pretty close fight, that being a majority decision loss to Maurice Briedis, 26-1 for the IBF title. So obviously he's been fighting for the IBF title twice. And I do believe the rehydration clause still works for cruiserweights. So that means Powell will no longer be restricted by the rehydration clause. As a matter of fact, I kind of butchered his resume. He actually owned the IBF title when he lost to Briedis. He won it against Andrew Tabiti for the vacant title. So obviously he is world champion, and apparently he's also the WBA world champion back in 2017. Now, of course, BoxRec stopped recognizing the WBA title, so obviously I can't tell. But besides that, obviously, Powell is obviously Dorquitos. Of course, Powell, I'm so sorry for butchering his name, he's been around. He's fought the best, and he has power. But not any type of power, cruiserweight power. And that's a very good thing. A very calculated fighter, obviously. Patient, willing to let things play out before throwing his biggest shots. And overall, really learning their opponents, which is a very good thing for himself, obviously. It's always good to learn from your opponents. But what's bad is he has 39, so obviously that's the big elephant in the room. But besides that, Zurdo Ramirez, 47-1, 30 wins by way of knockout, of course, is the unified world champion, as he beat Arsen Gulamarian, 27-0, for the WBA title, and he beat Chris Billum Smith for the WBO title, so obviously unifying them. Of course, his one loss is back in light heavyweight for the WBA title against Dimitri Bivol. Of course, some of his other good wins, of course, include Joe Smith Jr., a very good fight, and Jesse Hart. So obviously, Zurdo Ramirez is moving up, and you can tell he's not a natural cruiserweight, but he does still carry some very good power, hurting Billum Smith and hurting Gulamarian. So obviously, although he is the smaller fighter technically, he packs a punch. Not a knockout punch, but he can pack a punch. The bad thing with Powell, is the fact that he's older. He's inactive, obviously, for waiting for the fight, obviously. He has some good skill, but he struggles against those who could kind of move around the ring and counter you, which is, of course, something that Zurdo now does. Obviously, before he was a flat-footed fighter, pressure fighter. Now he can actually move. And he's obviously not Zurdochenko, but he can get himself some slight angles using his southpaw, obviously, skills. What is it? Pop shotting, as they would say. Basically being right in front of them while also not getting hit that much, but landing a bunch of hits. So obviously, Ramirez is the younger fighter, and his style kind of doesn't completely counter Powell's. But besides that, yeah, Zurdo Ramirez is the younger fighter, although he is 34, so it's not that much younger. So he's not like super young, right? But he's a younger fighter. He has a better style. He has really filled in at cruiserweight. And unfortunately for Dorquitos, I think I got his name right, Zurdo's style will be a little bit too much for the 39-year-old. Landing big shots, and I think this will be his first stoppage victory at cruiserweight. He has gone decision both times, but I think this time I think he knocks him out. I think he stops him just by overwhelming him in the 8th round. But anyways, the main event of the evening, the one everyone's talking about, kind of Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now, of course, once again, this is one of the most decorated fighters Jake Paul has fought. And obviously, Chavez Jr. is looking to, well, upset Jake Paul. Once again, it's not really on someone's bucket list to lose to Jake Paul. But let's get right into it. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is 54-6, 34 wins by way of knockout, 2 losses by way of knockout, and 1 draw. Of course, that 1 draw comes all the way back in 2005 by points. Very interesting. Of course, his losses all come in championship type fights. Obviously, his first loss, where he lost the title, was against Sergio Martinez by unanimous decision, and some other ones, but the most notable one obviously is against Canelo, Daniel Jacobs, and Anderson Silva. That's right, he lost to Anderson Silva, split decision. Anderson Silva was 1-1 at the time, and he came in 10 pounds heavier than Silva, and he lost. So obviously, not the best look for Chavez Jr. And he is coming off a unanimous decision win, basically won all around against the 1-0 Uriah Hall. Of course, Uriah Hall, he beat only one person before, and that was another debut fighter, that being Levon Bell. In a very interesting matchup, it was a somewhat close fight. Apparently not to the judges, but it was close. But now he takes on the problem child, Jake Paul, 11-1, with 7 wins by way of knockout. Of course, his 1 loss came by split decision against Tommy Fury, 8-0. Obviously, people were clowning him because that's the first time he fought someone his age and knew how to fight. But of course, he is coming off of the weird unanimous decision win against Mike Tyson. Yeah, what a world we live in, right? But besides that, some of his best wins come by, of course, Anderson Silva, who was 3-1 at the time, where he won by unanimous decision and knocking him down. Tyron Woodley, the former UFC welterweight champion. Of course, Silva was the former middleweight UFC champion. Of course, he also beat 2 professional fighters, that being Andre August, 10-1 in the first round, and Ryan Borland, 17-2, also in the first round. Now, of course, there's a lot of things you could say about it, for the sole fact that Borland, he got dragged up like 15 pounds and was also inactive when he fought Jake Paul. And of course, August also got dragged up like damn near 10 pounds. Not really, because he did have one fight beforehand against the 7-0 Brandon Martin. But overall, the records looked good, but the fight didn't really end. It ended quickly, right? Perfectly picked fighters that have good records are technically professional fighters. He beats them. Everyone's all like, oh, he's a professional fighter now. They don't think that, right? But besides that, let's get on with the tally system. That's why we're using it once again, unfortunately, for the Keyshawn Davis De Los Santos fight. The fight didn't happen, so we couldn't test our hypothesis or something like that. So obviously, the first obvious ones, that being power and defense, who do they go to? Power obviously goes to Jake Paul. He's the more natural cruiserweight than Chavez Jr. Defense can go to Chavez Jr., but at this point in his career, it's still not the best, right? Obviously, he's way better defensively than Jake Paul, obviously, but nowhere near his prime, right? And of course, Chavez Jr., his next one, obviously, that being speed, goes to Chavez Jr. His combinations, his movement overall is better than Jake Paul. So you could give him footwork and speed, therefore giving it a 3-1 lead for Chavez Jr. Resume. At this point in time, it goes to Jake Paul. He's more active. Technically, it's Chavez Jr. He's fought the better people even in his losses. But it's been so long since he's fought those people that they kind of just become obsolete, right? Resume goes to Jake Paul. Ring IQ goes to Chavez Jr., obviously being a world champion. And although technically it's been a long time since he's fought those people, those experiences still live on in Chavez Jr., so give him ring IQ. Now, of course, the next ones are a little bit trickier, that being durability. We have yet to see Chavez Jr. take a strong punch at cruiserweight. Weirdly enough, the same could be said for Jake Paul. Oh, we took the punches from Mike Tyson. I don't think those count, to be honest. And everyone's he's fought, their defense has not been the best, like, at all. He's just been able to land basically at will most of the time. So obviously, durability, I'm going to have to give it to Jake Paul only because Jake Paul is naturally bigger. By the way, we also have to give Jake Paul size. Size and durability go to Jake Paul. Stamina. Now here's another one. Jake Paul does not have the best stamina. Against people who can actually fight back and can take a punch, his stamina is kind of bad, right? And with Chavez Jr. being able to go to the body a lot easier than Jake Paul, stamina, I'm gonna have to give it to Chavez Jr. only because Chavez Jr. can fight tired. Obviously, with his experience, he could fight tired. So give me stamina for Chavez Jr. And that seems about it, right? Power, the resume, size, and durability all go to Jake Paul. Speed, footwork, ring IQ, defense, and stamina all go to Chavez Jr. Anything else, I think, doesn't count. Now, of course, Chavez Jr. does slightly edge out Jake Paul. If it wasn't for the fact that he's basically 40 and he's inactive. Those are all negatives on Chavez Jr. That being age and activity. He's only had one fight in a long time, that being against Uriah Hall, which is a very good fight. He showed that he had enough to be Jake Paul. He's shown he has enough to be Jake Paul. But in one fight in 3 years, that's not a lot. So we have to take away some points for age and activity. Therefore, putting the final score being Jake Paul 4, Chavez Jr. 3. Jake Paul slightly edges out Chavez Jr. by 1 point. I think I may be missing one, but at this point, I think that's all. Speed, you got the main one, speed, power, durability, defense, all those things. Right? Defense and durability are two different things. Defense obviously means you're not going to get punched a lot or with as big of a shot. But durability means that if your defense fails, you could take a punch better than the other guy, right? So I think that's good to differentiate from each other. But if not, then it's equal. 3-3, Paul and Chavez Jr. It's really about what type of Chavez Jr. appears in the fight. If the Chavez Jr. that fought Hall appears in the fight, I think he beats Jake Paul by decision. But if the one that fought Anderson Silva appears, I think he loses by knockout. I'm not going to be that guy. I think he loses by knockout. It's a 10-round fight. Chavez Jr. could use his experience, his ring IQ, his body work to break down Jake Paul. That is 100% possible. But with his age and his inactivity, it's a big if. You don't know. You're not for certain if it's going to happen. So give me Jake Paul by unanimous decision against Chavez Jr. in a very good fight. But anyways, I have Floyd Schofield by unanimous decision, Zerto Ramirez by stoppage victory, and Jake Paul by unanimous decision. But anyways, who do you guys have winning these fights? It's a very good night of action. Leave it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.